Paisanos, it is I, Mickey Saturn, and today I am here to talk about the Wii U, and I was planning to do this video anyway, just to go along with my PS4, Xbox One sale holiday reaction deal, but then, a couple days ago, we get the news that Nintendo has, had to revise down their sales estimates. And they've revised them down for the 3DS as well, but, not by as much. And the 3DS still sold actually pretty well. They took them from 18 million to 15 million or something like that, but that's still actually a lot. That's the best-selling hardware of the year or something. So, 3DS is actually doing okay. But the Wii U, they slashed their sales forecast by like 66%. They had been saying that they were going to sell 9 million, now they're saying they're only going to sell 2.8 million. This is through March, the end of their fiscal year. So from last March to this March, they're saying they're only going to have sold 2.8 million. And then you add in the launch numbers, and that's going to imply that if they're right in their new estimate, that, they'll have moved, I don't know exactly, but something in the neighborhood of like 5 million since launch. It's not good. And, I think everybody knew that whole 9 million number was never going to happen. It was strange that they kind of stuck to it as long as they did, because it just seemed so unlikely that it would have required explosive holiday sales. And, that obviously didn't happen. They haven't, I don't think, told us exactly how much they did sell. You have to kind of extrapolate it from these numbers. But it really doesn't matter how many they sold technically. I mean, and having the exact figure would be kind of interesting just because it would tell you how many they think they're going to sell in January, February, March. Surely they don't expect to sell many, right? But, it doesn't really matter. The fact is, they slashed their forecast by 66%. And, there's just no getting around to that. It's like, the technical term for what Nintendo has on their hands here is disaster. I mean, we're talking about a system that in its launch in its first year is maybe going to sell 5 million units. Which means that it's on track, maybe not even that many, maybe 4 million. It's on track, therefore, to have, something in the neighborhood of like between 15 and 20 million units sold globally in its life. Maybe, let's say it's right in the middle of that, 17.5 million. That is, 7 million worse than the GameCube. I mean, we're talking about a system that will struggle to reach GameCube level sales in its life, unless something changes. And Nintendo themselves made an interesting comment that I want to read here. This was Iwata speaking to investors, speaking at a press conference, actually, about that he gave about this radical, adjustment in their expectations. He said, quote, "We cannot continue a business without winning. We must take a skeptical approach whether we can still simply make game players, meaning systems, offer them in the same way as in the past for 20,000 yen or 30,000 yen, that's $200 to $300 basically, and sell titles for a couple thousand yen each." In other words, they must be skeptical in their approach. They need to not assume that they can continue to make systems, sell them for $200 to $300, and sell titles for a couple thousand yen each. To me, those are incredibly interesting comments, and I want to try to keep this video manageable, but I honestly could probably talk about this for like an entire day. There is so much to discuss. I mean, why is this happening? What is the problem? What can Nintendo do about it? Can they do anything about it? What will Nintendo do? How will they react? And that's what those comments get into, because what he seems to be saying is the one thing they're not going to do is just kind of what they've been doing. Like, one scenario for how Nintendo might react to all of this would be to just kind of ride the Wii U out, release the next one, and hope they do better. You know? And he's basically saying, we're not going to do that. We must take a skeptical approach. Whether we can offer game players. Is it meaningful that he called them game players and not something like consoles? Is that just a translation idiom thing? Or is he saying that they need to reevaluate whether a device that is specifically a game player is part of the issue? Maybe they need to be more like Sony and Microsoft and offer media centers, entertainment devices in general. And if that's what they're doing, when he says, well, maybe we can't offer game players for 20 to 30,000 yen, maybe what he means is maybe we should offer media centers for not $300, but $500 or something like that. That's one interpretation, but I feel like that is a possible interpretation because the comment is so vague that it leaves that open. But I think that's unlikely. I think what he's probably saying is that they maybe need to not offer them in that way, and they need to offer cheaper titles, cheaper hardware, and in a sense it's like a pulling back. It's like maybe not a complete abandonment of the whole idea of a console, but a sort of like a deliberate stepping back from even competing as much as they are now with Sony and Microsoft. And that is why those comments kind of trouble me as a fan, because I think that's the wrong reaction. But before I get into all of that, let me just back up to the first question I asked, which is, why is this happening? You know what I mean? What is the problem with the Wii U? I have a Wii U. A lot of you probably have one. Most of you don't, right? Statistics would suggest that most people don't have one. But if you have a Wii U, or if you've played one or something, you maybe will agree, the Wii U is actually pretty cool, I think. The gamepad is cool. I think the Wii U's like a fine system. It's significantly more powerful than a Wii. Is it as powerful as a PS4, Xbox One? No. But is Nintendo refusing to move forward at all? No. Right? They're moving forward. They just kind of deliberately set out a generation of hardware. I think history is starting to suggest that maybe was a critical error. For a long time, I felt like that was maybe a smart move, because I felt like publishers were going to be scared away from continuing with this push towards radical, better and better hardware, because it makes it harder and harder for them to make a profit on their games. But now I'm starting to wonder if the publishers just don't care, or don't have the ability to react to that for whatever reason, and so the publishers are going to ride that hardware train into wherever it leads, whether it's, bankruptcy or not, and by not following that path, Nintendo may have just permanently cut themselves off from third-party support. I don't know. But at any rate, the Wii U is definitely an advancement over the Wii, and yet, very few people are excited by it, very few people are interested in it, and why that is has to be answered before a plan can be formulated on the part of Nintendo for what to do about it. And I think there's several answers to the question, right? It's a complex question. The first reason is, I think the Wii U has just been marketed abysmally. I barely even see ads for the Wii U. And anecdotally, apparently many people still don't know that it's a whole new system. So, people don't know what it is. People don't know that they would want it, right? Why would they want it? They barely even know what it is. They certainly don't know why they might want it. All of that is just a marketing issue. And I think the branding was not helpful in that respect. But, I'm a bit surprised. I don't know. Are consumers even stupider than I thought? Maybe. To me, Wii U is not any harder to keep track of than the branding of all kinds of consumer electronics, right? Camcorders and all kinds of things just have gibberish names, you know what I mean? Like, this is the, XTSC 4000. Okay, you know what I mean? I don't see why it would really be any harder than anything else, but apparently it is. Whatever. I don't really have a full insight into that, but definitely though something went wrong there. That's one problem, but I think Their biggest problem, and what I regard as the real core root problem of all of their problems, is they do not get third-party support. They get better support from Japanese publishers than from Western publishers, but they don't get unconditional support from Japan, and they get basically no support from Western publishers, with the exception of Ubisoft, who does support Nintendo pretty well. Activision does some stuff with Nintendo, but I can't help but feel like that's soon going to stop. Just because it feels like Activision's heart isn't in it. It's like, yeah, they release Call of Duty Ghost, but they tell you, like right when they release it, that they're not going to do the DLC. It's like, well, who in their right mind would buy it then? It's like it's an explicitly gimped version of the game. It's like they don't really want to support it. And that's exactly what EA did with the Wii U. And in order to address the third-party support problem, I think it's like you have to understand what the problem is. I mean, it's one thing to say, well, third parties aren't supporting the system, but that's the situation, but that's not the problem. Because the problem is, why are they not supporting the system? And in my view, it's a complex problem that goes way back to like the N64 days. So it's like, I feel like this is like a problem that started with the N64 and has gotten worse and worse with each successive Nintendo system until it's reaching a point of critical mass with the Wii U. Because right at the time when HD development is making it increasingly impossible for Nintendo to justify the entire system with only their first-party games, right at that moment is the moment when third parties are basically openly admitting that they have no plans to ever support Nintendo. You might think, I think the kind of common sense thought is, well, if the hardware had more support, if it was in more homes or whatever, if more people had bought it, third parties would be more interested. I'm sure they'd be more interested, right? But just look at the Wii, and you can see that Nintendo could sell a shit ton of them and not necessarily get outstanding third-party support. Better third-party support? Sure. Excellent third-party support? No. Right? And why not? It's because third parties don't, in fact, just support whatever has the most market share. They are making evaluation about where the audience for their games are. And third parties have made the decision, and this is a decision not based on the Wii U specifically, but based on this long history with Nintendo. They've made the decision that Nintendo's audience and the audience for their games are just not the same. And this is a perception, right, that the third parties have. And as this perception has grown, their support for Nintendo has been more and more and more tentative over the last, 15 years. And as they have made more and more tentative, sort of non-committal support, yeah, we'll kind of do a port or something, we're not going to do anything outstanding. As that has grown, that has reinforced that perception to the consumer. So the consumers who do like those games also feel like, I guess I'm not supposed to buy Nintendo systems because they don't seem to want to make the games that I like anyway for that system. So, it's not like they don't have an option. They can just go buy some other system that does have the games they want. And so in this way, it becomes this self-fulfilling prediction that I don't see what Nintendo can do to reverse. I mean, reversing it would probably take another 15 years of concentrated, careful effort. You know what I mean? It's not something they can look at their sales this year, turn around and go, well, I guess we need more third-party support, let's go focus on that. I don't accept the premise that Nintendo's not already focusing on that. I feel like Nintendo has tried, with the Wii U, to put a lot of special attention on the idea that third parties are supporting them, right? In 2011 and in 2012, they had people from Activision on stage with them at E3, people from EA. They put a lot of emphasis on that they're getting all this support. Do you remember the big sort of splash screen that they put up that had all the third-party companies that were supposedly supporting the Wii U? And how many of that, in what sense did that pan out, really? It's like EA released some explicitly substandard ports that they admitted had cut features that were overpriced compared to what the games were retailing for on other systems, things like that. Obviously, those ports sold badly. Of course they would. EA then says, well, it's what we thought. Nobody that buys Nintendo systems likes our stuff. I guess we're not going to support them anymore. And now you're finding out, over the last year, we found out that they're not even going to attempt to support the Wii U with their new engines. Frostbite isn't going to support Wii U. I think Unreal 4 is supposedly not going to support Wii U. This is frustrating to watch, because this is not like a valuation that says we don't think it makes sense to port this game to the Wii U. This is a valuation that says we aren't planning to ever port any games to the Wii U. It's one thing to say we've made a game that isn't compatible with the Nintendo audience. It's something else to say we have decided a priori that we will not ever make anything that is going to work with the Nintendo audience. We will never support Nintendo. That is why we aren't going to include support for their platform into our engine. And if you say, well, this is a power issue, right? That Wii's not powerful enough, I don't really buy that. Because these engines are generally designed to be scalable anyway, so that they can produce ports to mobile devices, or so that they can produce PC ports that can run at lower specs. When you get a PC game, you go into the options, and there are all these settings to adjust the graphics, adjust the resolution and all of this, in order to make it run better. I mean, that's the ability to do that is built into the engine. They're already building that in. It would not be impossible for them to make these engines have a version that would support the Wii U. And to the degree that these are engines that then get licensed to other developers, then other developers are also handicapped, right? Because it's not just that Epic doesn't think they're ever going to make a game that's going to support the Wii U. No one that uses UDK is going to even have the option of supporting the Wii U. So this is this is a huge problem. That Nintendo cannot get third-party support, I feel like. So, what do they do in the face of that? I don't even know. It's like I feel like there's not even a solution. So, I think there's no getting around the fact that the situation for the Wii U, for me, it feels like is borderline hopeless already. I think Nintendo has to ride it out for a little while, and I think they have to start thinking about what their replacement is. And if they want to think about how to make the most of what they have with the Wii U, I think there's some ways they can do that.